Hey everyone, Mia Paulus here. So today we're going to have a little bit of a story time and talk to you about my biggest business breakthrough. And really it's more of a personal story about business, but hopefully it has a little bit of emotion for you on realizing that this experience and this breakthrough really only happened 1 year ago. So I've been in the business space for 15 years and I'm still having big business breakthroughs. So it never ends. I always think of business as whack-a-mole, right? You fix one thing and it breaks another, or the world changes and then you have to keep fixing things. And so I want to talk to you about a breakthrough that just recently happened for me and how it's really changed the way I look at business forever. I hope that this story will resonate with you and maybe even inspire you on your own entrepreneurial journey. So let's begin. So I'm embarrassed to say this, but as an entrepreneur, I've lied to myself for a lot of years. Not maliciously, but really, I always thought I was farther along than I am. I always thought I was, I need to grow my company when I hadn't validated my product yet. Or now I'm able to even realize, like, when I have to do a huge pivot, sometimes it throws me back into a validation phase in my company. And so I've started to find patterns in what I call the impact equation, where I'm able to really piece through, that's why I'm experiencing that. That's why the companies that I'm working with are experiencing this. See, the problem is as visionaries, we see the vision really clearly. And so in the early phases of my business, 2006, I had a really good vision of what would happen. I didn't think it would take 15 years to get there, but sometimes that clear vision can actually be a detriment for us. It's actually interesting, one of my coworkers, he would come up with this idea and I was like, yeah, actually that was part of my vision I created from 10 years ago of what I thought would happen. So it's really cool that you're saying that. He's like, yeah, right. And then I would literally show him a document from 10 years ago of like the same thing he said was in there. That's happened a few times. So it's really crazy, like for me, just to get continuous affirmation that, okay, it's a journey, right? Sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. And we have to be able to trust the process. So sometimes, we look at people and we think they're an overnight success, but when you really dig into their journey, you see that they have a history, they have a past that's priming them for where they're headed in the future. And so again, in the early phases, another trap that I fell into was that shiny objects, right? People loved my business model. So they would come to me and like, hey, I had this great idea. And then we would use my resources to do it because I had the staff and the employees and I was like, this is such a great idea. And then they wouldn't deliver on their part or wouldn't work out. And then I literally paid for all the resources and the labor to be able to get this good idea not implemented. And so enough times of that, I realized like, okay, I have to, one, stay focused on my business model, make sure I get that going first and get my core product in line. And then I can go and have fun with more ideas. But also it made me realize that I have to be a little more discerning on who I work with and who I'm willing to kind of partner up with. I'm at a point in my business now where I have these ideas of kind of buying up other companies and dumping them through my model and getting them to kind of autopilot by themselves. But I realized like, I don't really want to go alone anymore. I've done this entrepreneur journey as a sole owner for 15 years, but in other ventures, I'm like, I actually value partnerships and would love to not have to think about all the different aspects when I add a company through my model. So I'm getting to my biggest epiphany, I promise. So the other problem I had, like obviously besides just shiny object syndrome, was I hired a bunch of visionaries like me. In the early stages of business, you get excited with like-minded people around you. Today I appreciate the differences. I appreciate the different brains that can cohesively make an amazing company. But in the early stages, you think you're doing the right thing by hiring a bunch of visionaries and you realize that you have a lot of great planning meetings, but not a lot of work getting done. And just understand that every entrepreneur has their own journey and it's sometimes not in the timeline that we want to go through. Okay, so before I reveal my biggest epiphany, if you like videos like this, go ahead and like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and I would love to have you be a part of our community. So one of the things I always tell people about my business and how did you come up with team sourcing? Well, the way I came up with the company that I have today is literally doing everything the wrong way. So when you read kind of the Edison quote, he has a quote where he says, I didn't fail, I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Sometimes I feel like that was my company as I kept trying things. Okay, that doesn't work, that doesn't solve the problem. Okay, let's try this. And that's really how it's evolved over the years. And some of the things that I learned is how turnover kills companies. How to structure teams appropriately, how skills-based routing is super important. So instead of feeling like there's a jack of all trades, it's important to have different people doing the job. So I've had many epiphanies. I've kind of evolved the model over the years. But my biggest breakthrough actually happened only about a year ago. So what was happening is we started to bring clients, lots of clients in, and we kept trying to figure out like, man, why are we not solving the problem for them? Why are we not getting them the results that we need? And I love business books. I love listening to experts, and there's a lot of business advice out there where they say, this is what you need to do, but they don't say this is what you need to do for this phase of business you're in. So my biggest epiphany is that we need to be aware of the phase of business that we are in and know what it is that we need to do for that phase. And then you're able to know what phase is the next phase that you're going to be transitioning to. And then you can be aware of the roadblocks and the speed bumps that you're potentially going to run into that next phase. And so I know this is like, you're like, Mia, that's not a very big epiphany. I know. But like all of a sudden, all of the things started to come together, and it's like that is the biggest reason why I haven't been able to consult as at the level that I wanted to consult with before. It's the reason why we couldn't segment our clients well enough to know, okay, people are aligned to themselves of what they really need, right? And it's because we've been told that, hey, I need marketing, I need sales, this is what I need. But it's like, no, every phase is unique and every phase is different. I've talked about this in other videos that I've done, but there's 3 phases I talk about. I talk about the startup phase, and in that startup phase, there's an ideation phase where you're trying to come up with a product, and then the validation phase where you're validating your minimum viable product. And then I have the growth phase, and a lot of people think startup is just a type of business, and then the phase that they're in is growth immediately. Like immediately they transition to growth, and that is not the case. And that's something that I always thought of too, is like, I'm a growth because I'm a startup. No, you're a startup first, and that is a phase of business, and then you transition into a growth phase after you've validated your product. So in the growth phase, you have pre-scale and scale. Before you can scale a company, there's a certain amount of systems and process and team building and product launches that you need to do to be able to test it before you go full on and creating an evergreen scalable model. That leads me to the next phase, which is a scaling phase, which is where you're really working to create a sustainable company. Because again, a lot of companies are creating these, they're good at launching, and I didn't really realize this until recently, that the new trend with businesses is to just get good at launching and getting revenue in and cash flow, and then that's where they stop. But we have to go, and it's probably because the solutions have only supported it up to that point. But we really need to transition into more of an evergreen state and a sustainable company. So in that scaling phase, you're starting to think of automations. How can I make my business more sustainable? And then when you get into what I call the evergreen stage, there's 2 phases in that phase, which is, or 2 sub phases, I should say, in that phase. The first one is what I call creative expansion. You're never mature, like some of the other diagrams that you'll see are. You're always in creative expansion mode. When you've created one product, you need to go and create a new product or diversify products or expand the product you have. Like, you gotta always be innovating, because you will get passed up in this world. This world is moving so fast, so you can no longer just kind of set it, forget about it. You need kind of somebody always looking at how to optimize it. So that's probably like my biggest breakthrough is understanding these different phases and what goes into it. And the last phase of that evergreen, there's 2 parts. The evergreen is the transition phase. Even if you're like, so many entrepreneurs just get stuck heads down and don't really think about the end. But if you start with the end in mind, it actually gives you some clarity, something to work towards, something to be like, eventually in 5 years or 10 years, I want to sell this company. Or my whole goal is to get this company running on its own in 1 year. Using the tools that hopefully I can share with you in these videos. I can get that business running, and I'm going to sell it. Or I'm going to go and autopilot the company and get the right people in and let it run itself. Like, there's so many ways you can design the company, but beginning with the end in mind will help you to understand that. Okay, so if you want to learn more about these different phases, I'm actually putting on a clinic. You can go to stressfreesupergrowth.com where I talk about these different phases. And then you can maybe start to empathize your journey a little bit. Be like, oh, that's why I've been struggling. So again, I'm having epiphanies left and right still to this day, and I hope to continue to have them, because you start to realize the more you learn, the less you know. So again, if you want to learn more, go to stressfreesupergrowth.com.